It's time to down tools for a bit. Welcome to the ToolShed, the influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the ToolShed Podcast. Estimating is the bane of existence for many builders. It is probably the single biggest whinge that I hear from builders. Very few of them like doing it, and so we're always looking for ways to reduce that pain and look for platforms and services and things that can just make it more easy, less time consuming, give them more confidence in the result, but basically in some way give them back some time and give them back some life. So we're always looking for that sort of stuff. And we've talked about V2E, which stands for Vision to Estimating, before. We've had the founder and owner of the organisation, Michael Reed, on, but it's such a constant question and a constant conversation that, you know, we want to circle around and remind people, find out about updates and see what's going on. So I'm going to be talking to Tom Lawson of V2E in just a minute. Before we do, I need to remind you, if this isn't your first podcast with the ToolShed, first time with the ToolShed, I suggest that if you haven't already done it, is to take the Builder's Scorecard. There is a link in the description, and after 90 seconds, that's about how much of your life you have to invest in this. But if you invest that 90 seconds, we will send you a score, how well you did in the 4 critical areas of a successful building business. But not only that, you will receive some suggestions and some content to be able to help you overcome the issues that are in any of those areas that you didn't score too well in. And even in the areas that you did score well in, there'll be some suggestions, some ideas that'll be passed on to you for improvement there. So go ahead, hit the link, do the Builder's Scorecard, and get your score and some suggestions in the email post haste. Tom Lawson from V2E is with us in Adelaide, I believe. Is that where you're
That's
sitting
right.
right
Yeah,
now?
that's right.
You could just
Job.
tell
Thanks
by
for
the
having me, Mick.
background that it was Adelaide.
No, you're right. No, definitely in Adelaide. It's definitely autumn here. I felt like I was walking through a foot of leaves falling on the ground this morning. So it looked like overnight, all the leaves fell off the trees, but that's okay.
One of the previous guests that I was interviewing just the other day was bagging me for wearing a hoodie, but I am down in Tasmania, and he was up in Townsville or something like that where the sun's still out. So fair enough.
That's right. A hoodie would be your yearly uniform, wouldn't it?
No, come on. Come on. I've only just put it on. I was wearing shorts just the other day.
Yeah, right.
I think some of the weather, the best weather we get is in autumn. It's like absolutely blue sky, no wind, just magnificent.
Perfect.
Chilly in the morning, chilly in the evening, but magnificent during the day. But anyway, we're not here to talk about weather. We're here to talk about estimating. And I just want to find out a little bit about you, your position, your involvement. How did you get involved in V2E? We've heard the V2E story, how it became about, but how did you get involved in it?
Yeah. So my name's Tom Lawson. My position is business development and product manager of V2E. How I became involved is, it's pretty interesting. So you've had Michael, like you mentioned in your intro, Michael, our business owner and managing director, on before. So his story from owning timber and truss plants and dealing with builders and estimating mishaps and from the supplier end. So wanting to think about a service that can help builders get that a bit better. So where I came into it is I actually worked for Michael for the in the frame and truss plant for nearly 7 years for him, doing truss detailing and wall frame design and timber design and stuff like that. But showed a real eagerness to help improve some systems and always be keen to look at softwares and projects and a bunch of that kind of stuff. So Michael came to me one day with this idea and said, look, we've got this idea about estimating. We've got this software that we want to look at, seeing if we can start to use. It runs inside of SketchUp. Do you know anything about SketchUp? And I said, well, I studied, 1 year of architecture at uni, so I know how to open SketchUp and draw a couple of lines. So that's a good start.
You're
And he
highly
went, yeah,
qualified.
that's right. Yeah, that's what he got. So I went, okay, well, have a look at this and see how you go. And so for about the next year, we spent looking at it, and where we sort of came from. The what V2E used to be was a company that did stick timber takeoffs and carpentry packs for people. So just a little bit more background of where this sort of start come from is based in Adelaide. I always love talking about this because builders that aren't based in South Australia always shake their head about what I'm about to tell them. We build quite differently in South Australia with our framing. So one of the biggest differences is we're pretty much, I'd say 95% a stick build timber state. There's not many suppliers that do prefab wall frames. There's definitely not many volume builders that use it. It's all hand stick built. But the main difference is when we do sheet roofs, metal roofs, we do our trusses at 1,200 centers, not 900 centers like most of the other states. We only do trusses from the girder to the girder, and we hand pitch the rafters and hips on site. We don't use ceiling battens to the underside. We put a timber ceiling joist between each truss. We solder it down from the hanger, or the binder, is what some people call it. And then we use a single top plate on our walls, and we align up the trusses over the studs, and then we direct fix the plasterboard to the ceiling and the trusses. So lots of people hear that and think South Australia is cowboys, the way they build, but because it's a fair bit different. But so where that kind of, the reason I explain that is because it means that there's lots of timber framing detailing that gets done in South Australia to suit stick build carpentry. So our business was a what we call a timber estimating business to start with, which basically meant that we did cutting lists and carpenters for layouts for how to use on site. So we were doing that with a 2D software to an Excel spreadsheet, which is, like what a lot of people do estimating in general. Draw something by hand or measure on a PDF and then put it across to an Excel sheet or calculate across. But our mindset behind it was we want to be able to draw something, and then what we draw, we want to be able to count it automatically. So where that kind of journey took us on was when we found this software that we use, which is a 3D software that we use now, and what V2E was kind of based on when it started. Could we do what we were doing originally with framing, but with a new software with 3D, which we successfully did for a few years. And after doing that, what we looked at is, well, if we're having success by taking the mentality of, we take the plans for the builder, we review it, and we draw. In this instance, we're drawing the framing layout for people, the framing construction model, and then we can produce a cutting list from it. Why can't we take the same idea on a whole project? So why can't we take the plans and draw everything? The plasterboard, the bricks, the Rio, the concrete, the roofing. And then why can't we, from our model, get the takeoff or the list or the estimate from what's there? And so that was where this idea kind of started. And so then it was like anything, a couple of years of testing and trialing this way, and does this work? And then how does this work? And then, well, if we're doing this, how do we do this more, and things like that. But that really is what it comes down to, is our mindset has been, we take information, we can draw it, and then when we draw it, we should be able to produce the count for you. And that's kind of the basis of where it is. So my role has been coming in, and the way I like to describe my role and the way I work with Michael, our owner, is he has all these crazy ideas, and then he comes into the office, and then I'm the one that's got to figure out how we're actually going to do it, which is fun. But it just means I get to muck around with software, I get to deal with builders, get to talk to people like you about systems and what's happening, and what's happening in the industry, and then see how we can be a part to kind of help alleviate and do some of that kind of stuff for builders.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. We're always trying to bring you information that's going to make your life as a builder much easier. So give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Cool. I mean, it's obvious that you're passionate about it. There's always a question. Like we started looking at this a number of years ago. How can we systemize the estimating and potentially outsource much of it to free up builders time to work on other parts of their business that's really important. And the one question that just kept coming up was the I guess the responsibility, and I wouldn't call it mistrust, but it was just the lack of confidence that if somebody else did the estimating and then we signed contracts and then there was a mistake, it's my arse in the sling. So I've got to go and check everything anyway. So I might as well do it myself, was a lot of the of the comments back in the day. That's obviously changing because there organisations like yours around that are being patronised, and you hear about them, about the place. How are you experiencing that now? Is there still any hesitation? How do you deal with that? How do you give the builder the certainty and the confidence to go, can you guys do that, and they trust what you create without having to double check everything?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I would say the mistrust probably is a fair comment, actually. So because it is a conversation that happened, and it is like trust for a builder is a big thing. Like, and even in the building industry, a lot of what any decisions based on around even clients choosing a builder, builders choosing a service, builders choosing a sub trade, a supplier, is all about who do they trust the most, kind of thing. So mistrust and trust is a big focus in the building industry. To answer that question, there's kind of two parts that I think I'll talk about. So the first one is, I totally agree to some extent with builders, and the difference between what we try and look at from an estimating point of view compared to other estimating services, that we don't want to tell the builder what the job is going to cost. We want to tell the builder how much of everything there is in the job. So how many materials, number of materials,
right,
labor count, whether it's measures for a subcontractor, allowances, labor hours, breakdown for in-house employees, number of nails, sheets of plasterboard, all that kind of stuff. Because we live in, like, we're based in Adelaide. I live here in Adelaide now, but I grew up in a small town called Balaclava. So if anybody's listening and knows where Balaclava, shout out to Balaclava. Balaclava is when I was living there, it's about 1,500 person town, about 90 minutes north of Adelaide. And so growing up in the country and coming to the city, one of the things I noticed was even only 90 minutes away, 91 Ks away, the way builders price and what things cost in rural areas is different to what they cost and the way they price in the metro areas. So what has never made sense to me is that how somebody who is based in Adelaide can tell somebody who's based in New South Wales how much their job should cost. Now, I can understand that from here's what the industry says the benchmark should be, but how can I tell you what you should be, essentially what you should be paying for your job, kind of thing, what your job should cost to build? Because if a builder is going to take that costing and then try and put margin markup to then work out what their profit's going to be, if they don't know what their cost is, so what they're paying for their suppliers, what their trade rates are, what their exact quotes are, what their own in-house hourly rate is going to be, how are they actually going to know that that's actually the profit they're going to make at the end of it? Because they're putting margin markup on what somebody else's numbers, kind of thing. But the flip side to that is, it shouldn't matter if a house is being built in Adelaide or in Balaclava. It should not change the amount of bricks that need to be ordered on the job. Right. So what we've come to is, if we can give you the most detailed takeoff, count of everything that's in the job. And you as the builder know your pricing, because if you have a relationship with your sub-trades, you should know their rates, or you should know which sub-trades are going to give you a quote. If you have a relationship with your suppliers, you should know what your buying rates are, or at worst case, know where to go to find your rates, because you know your supplier and you know what their local price is going to be. And then if you've got in-house laborers or carpenters on the books and you know what your charge out rate for those guys are, you should be able to calculate your in-house labor. So all of a sudden, if you've got somebody that's done the work to do all the numbers and the counting and the measuring for you, and you know all the pricing, and all you're doing is putting the pricing against the numbers, isn't that going to give you a truer cost of what your job should actually cost, so you can be more confident going into the contract signing? So that's the mindset that we've kind of taken. And then how have we built that trust? Well, where we get our numbers from, where we do our takeoffs, we don't scale rule. We don't get the pen and paper out. We don't get the ruler out, stuff like that. We don't highlight. We don't mark things off on a plan and then manually type them across to an Excel sheet. We also don't use a lot of softwares at the moment have the same style of takeoff, which is, upload a plan, scale it, color in the PDF, and that should give you some measurements. So then you can replicate that, sort of put through different measurements. But the problem with all of those methods is, if it's a manual process, you've got to rely on experience to know, all right, well, if there's a pier here, I know that a pier costs X amount, because for one pier, that dollar value represents these 10 things that go into it. And I just know that because I've been an estimator for 15 years and that's my knowledge. Or you've got to scale your plans exactly right, so that you don't, when you zoom in and you've actually started the corner of the plasterboard, measure 20 mil off the corner. So by the time you measure the whole plan, you're actually added 15 square meters on, then you don't need to, kind of thing. You've got to have that level of detail. Or the other part you got to do is have all the information there in a 2D plan ready to use, which quality of plans is not really getting much better at the moment. Like the amount of times we see plans come across our desks that are still hand sketched, that don't show all the walls on the elevations, that don't really, one elevation doesn't match what the other elevation looks like, and things like that. So how do you know that you're going to pick up all the details you need to pick up to do that estimate, if that's the kind of method you're taking? And that's where our idea of using the 3D construction model comes in, because essentially what we try and do is take all of the builder's consultancy docs. So he's got engineering, architectural plans, interior plans, services plans, contours, all hydraulics, all that kind of stuff. And we'll try and put it all into one-to-one scale model, so we can actually see how they're all going to interact with each other. And from that, what the software that we use does is it's parametric, which means as we're drawing it, it's giving us live data. So it means as I'm drawing that wall frame, it's telling me how many studs are what length, because it's actually drawing the individual studs. And it's telling me how many square meters of cladding there are, which we can then use to figure out, well, how many sheets, how many nails, how many joints, because as I'm drawing it, it's giving me the live measurement. So the trust factor comes in, because we can actually show the builder how we've come up with things. One of the best things I like to say when I'm doing a presentation to builder is look at retaining wall details, and you have starter bars that come out of the footing and they come across the footing and then they come up into the base of the blockwork. So then you can have the vertical bars come in and horizontals and tie to bind the core filling with the footing in the blockwork. Now, you could do a takeoff on starter bars by going, well, there's this many meters of footing and the starter bars are this many centers. So I think that's going to be the right amount. Or the fact is, if we want to do a takeoff on the starter bars, we'll draw each individual starter bar. So you could actually come into the model, look at the starter bars and sit there and count on the screen. All right, I've got 15 starter bars in my takeoff. I want to look on the screen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 15. Yeah, tick. So the reason that we can build trust is because the takeoff comes directly from what you can see in 3D in front of you. And the other part to that, what I just mentioned briefly, is a bit about that clash detection, kind of bringing all these consultancy docs together. Like one of the biggest, I think it's a bit of a joke when you put it this way, kind of thing, but one of the biggest things that I feel sorry for builders about in this industry, especially custom home builders who are working off different plans every time. Like if you're a custom home builder and you're working off different architectural plans for every job, potentially different engineering plans, interior design, hydraulic, survey contour plans, services plans, all of those things could be from a different consultant on every job, because the nature of building custom homes that are designed by different architects, different designers, and they could all be handled by different consultants on different jobs. So there could be different combination of docs as well. Now, the builder hasn't actually drawn any of those plans themselves, but you know whose responsibility it is to make sure they all work together on site?
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
builder's fault. It's the builder's responsibility to make sure that the structural steel is actually going to work with the highlight windows, or that the joinery cupboards are actually going to not clash with the lowered ceiling underneath the stair header, because those are all the details that happen when you get to site, not when you're estimating the job.
Yeah. So run me through the process, because I'm just thinking, somebody listening to this going, this makes a lot of sense. And, if I can at least get that part done accurately, that I can trust that all I need to do is add the pricing to all of the pieces. Run me through the steps that a builder needs to go through right from before they contact you. What do they have to have ready? They contact you, you do your magic, then they have to do a certain amount of work to be able to end up with a final price that they can go and present their prospect. So run us through each of the steps so it's sort of really clear as to what we need to provide and what the process is.
Yep. No, we'll do. So I'll do that. I'll go through steps, and I'll go through a couple of different things that can help, depending on what you've got set up, how it can potentially alleviate some of that stuff as well. So at a general day to day, we can work off whatever information the builder's got. So we sometimes work with builders who go, look, all I've got is floor plan and some elevations, but I know how we want to quote it. So we want to quote it with this style slab, with this style allowances, with this type of cladding, with all that kind of information. So all we need is basically that kind of information to be able to then come in, produce a 3D, give it back to the builder, fully take off out. Now, what we can do with that then is put it into their software for them. So if they're using a project management software, want to build exact things like that, we can then give it to them so they can import it straight into their software, so they can be doing their pricing part inside their software. Or if you're a builder that doesn't have any project management software, we can give it to you in a formulated Excel sheet so that you can go and put your rate against each line on them, and it will calculate it for you all the way down the bottom. So we can do that. Now, the key with that part is, it's like anything. The more information that's available, the more detailed we can make it. So if you have a full suite of final plans, we can give you the final BOQ ready to go. So if you have full engineering docs, full hydraulic docs, all that kind of stuff, we can do that. But if you've got prelim plans, we'll work with you to produce the same detail of how you want to do it. So we can go, look, I've got a floor plan. We want to do it with a raft slab, 2 pours. So we want to do footings first, then a 300 mil box up with the slab on top. We want to use linear board for where it says weatherboard. We want to do this, and this. We can do the same style of thing with that kind of information as well. So the job process can come in and go, whatever information the builder has can come to us. We can do a model. So every job we can produce the model for that. You can get in and see things like where the concrete allowance is, where the plasterboard allowance is, where the tile allowances are, all that kind of stuff. Produce the takeoff that the builder can then go through and put his pricing against, and then use that to present his quote to his customer. But what he can then do from there is he can use the model to present to his customer. He can say, hey, actually, I want to show you the reason we came up with this price is because we based it on a slab like this. And we can show the slab, we can show the footing beams, we can show the Rio. Actually, we want to draw you guys' attention to the staircase that's been drawn in here actually isn't going to work. And let's show you why, so we can get into the model and show you the rise and run's going to be too high, or we need to move a wall out the way to be able to get in there. For renovation extensions, this is how much work we have to do to attach this extension onto the back of this existing house at the front. So this is why we've allowed this much to come in and do some work here. So that's what the builder can do at that part. But at the end of the day, like I said, the steps for a job is whatever information the builder has, we'll work with as best we can. We will always produce a model and we will always produce a takeoff from that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where that can then get better, and what you talked about is the builder still has to do a little bit of work on the end of that. Now, builders, it doesn't matter how they get their estimating done, whether they do it themselves, whether they have an estimator in-house, whether they get pricing from somewhere else. There's always going to be some part that the builder does, because the builder should always be confirming what he's got, making sure his quotes that he gets in for items are there, putting all that part together, ready to present to his client. But what we could be doing is this idea that if you're a builder that gets some of your sub-trades to quote things, so you get plasterboard quoted, say, for example, and you get roofing quoted, say, for example. Now, imagine if you had some budget roofing and plasterboard rates that you could use. So you send off the quotes to your subbies the same time that you send us the plans. So when we come back and we give you the takeoffs and you put your rate to it and you get the quote come in, all of a sudden the builder has now got a budget to compare the quote against to it. So you come in and go, well, look, as per the rates that my roof has given me, I think the budget for the roofing should be 20 grand. And you get the quote back from the roofer and it's 22 grand. Happy days. It's 2 grand difference. That's within my percentage of variance of what I want my budget to my quote to be. Yep, we'll sign the contract based on the quote. No worries. But if you think the budget should be 20 grand and the roofer's quote comes back in at 30 grand, all of a sudden now the builder has not only got something to compare to, he's also got something he can come back to the trade and go, hey, we use this rate and this is what measurements we use. This is what we came up with. How come your quote's here? Because what I always think about the relationship between builders and subbies is builder is always happy, or should be always happy, if the subby needs more money built into his quote, kind of things. But the point is the builder needs the subby to tell him that before he signs the contract, not after he signs the contract. So if he says to him, look, I've budgeted 20 grand for the roofing, your quote's 30 grand. Why? And the roofer comes back and goes, look, we've got to do this. We've got to climb up the hill because it's right on top of the hill. So it's going to cost us more in travel. I've got to pay for a crane to get there to lift the sheets up. I've got to do this. I've got to allow for this. And so I've allowed some more fudge factor into this, and has the conversation with the builder. All of a sudden, how much better is that relationship and conversation between the subby and the builder, so that when they sign the contract, it's not, oh, hey, mate, like, just let you know, I've had to invoice you for an extra 5-10 grand because we didn't account for this stuff and now we're going to pay for it. And the builder can go, but you signed a quote, like you quoted me this, and the roofer can go, no worries, I got another job, I can start, see you later. So it gives the builder that ability to be able to do that kind of stuff. But the flip side of that is, as well, is if subbies don't like quoting, because they're the ones that are doing the work on site. So if they're the ones that are coming home and trying to do quotes when they should be chilling out and stuff like that, and the builder wants to chase subbies for quotes and all that kind of gear as well, now he's also got a budget and some measurements to back up his budget to have the conversation as well. Hey, mate, like, I know I've been chasing it for this quote. Just want to let you know, this is what we've budgeted. This is where it is. Does that sound right? Or should I just add some more in? Like, let's work together so I can get this quote done, kind of thing. But I don't want to shaft you. Like, I want you to tell me what it is, but here's some information I can give you that can hopefully help you. Now, you imagine how much more that improves the relationship between the subby and the builder as well. Because now all of a sudden the subby feels like the builder's helping him get stuff through. He's going to want to put the effort in to get the quote back to him. He's going to want to do the work because the builder's there to work with him as well. So I'm a big believer in builders have access to so much data and information, but they just don't necessarily know how to use it or how to utilize it the best in their processes, kind of thing. And that's where we can hopefully come in, is we can give you so much detailed information, data, takeoffs, but not only that, we can help teach you guys how to use that information with your subbies, with your pricing, with your estimates, things like that.
Yeah, perfect. So you will give the hours that it takes to do certain jobs and what have you, but I'm assuming, so just clear my mind up, that if I'm the builder, you're not estimating how many project management hours I need to add to that project, and that's speaking with the clients, meeting with the clients, all of that sort of project management, herding the cats, all of that sort of stuff.
Yep.
That's outside the scope of what you do, I'm assuming, but you can certainly set me right because I'm asking the question.
No, it's a great question, and it's one that comes up often. And my answer to that is probably a little bit of yes, a little bit of no. So,
Okay.
so the answer to that is what I am fully aware of is items like project management, supervision, time with the client, that kind of stuff. It is all going to be very different per builder.
Yeah.
Because depending on how their pre-con process is set up, how they charge, what they charge, whether they do a lump sum, whether it's per hour, whatever it is, kind of thing, whether it's included in contract, whether it's pre-con, whatever it is always going to be different. But what I want to do is still put stuff in there so that the builder doesn't forget to add it in.
Yep.
So for instance, in our takeoffs, we still always allow an allowance for site supervision and allowance for project management. So it's a trigger for the builder to make sure he doesn't miss it in his takeoff kind of thing. And so it's up to them. But when it comes to the hours, like you said, yeah, we do full labor hour projects, project breakdown as well. What we're really big on is telling the builder where the information's come from. So because we don't price things, one of the things I hear from people is, they've got a line item that says, carpentry labor, build frames, build joists, do this on site, do this on site, do this on site. There might be 10 line items, $100,000, and go, okay, but how does that dollar value work out to these line items? What do we do here? And it's industry secrets. That's, black magic. An estimator knows what he's doing. So trust the estimator, because I've been doing this for a long time. Or that's just what this is allowed for. So, you got to confirm it though. You got to go through it. And so the builder's got no idea of how that's been built up, how that works, what he's meant to do with that info. Whereas when we try and do labor hour breakdowns, we'll try and be as clear with the builder as we want to be, and how we come up with it. Because if the builder wants to change it, then he should be able to change it, and he should have all the reasons to back it up. So for instance, what we'll do is we might say labor site setup. The line item is unload and install temporary fencing, 8 hours. And then in brackets we'll say, because we've used a rate of X amount of hours per meters of temp fence. And so all of a sudden now a builder's got a line item. He's got in his model where the temp fence is drawn, so he can physically see in the model how much temp fence he's got to do. He's got the takeoff of how many meters of temp fence he needs. And now he's got a starting point to know, I do need to allow some hours to go and set it up. This is how many hours. And where did they pull that from? Okay, because I've used that mathematical equation. Right, if I want to change that because I think it looks light or heavy, I can do that. But at least I can do that confidently because I've got all the information in front of me of how to do that. And where we come up with those equations, those ratios, is just through every single builder that we talk to, that we do labor hour breakdowns, we get feedback from. Hey guys, how do we go? Did you have to change much? Do you think we're light? Do you think we're heavy on this? Where's this come from? We have guys in our staff who we've got one of our staff members used to run a chippy gang for a lot of years. So carpentry work, we get feedback from him about what would actually be on site. We've got guys who, worked in frame and truss plants and stuff like that. So they kind of know hours it takes to load and install that kind of stuff and things. We're getting feedback from builders on, actually on this one, we budgeted 20 hours, but we actually did 24 hours, but because we did this instead. So we want to maybe up our rate on this. So we're constantly trying to improve and get better and better by getting live feedback on the jobs that we're doing. But the main part of it is we want to do the work to give you the numbers, but we want to be really clear to tell you how we came up with the numbers. So that way, if you do want to make a change, you can make the change confidently yourself, kind of thing, without changing it, because like a builder's gut serves him pretty well. He should be able to look at a price or a number and know in his gut whether that sounds right or whether it seems light on, kind of thing. And so if he looks at it and goes, feels light on, but I don't know why, compared to feels light on, but I can see how they come up with it, let me throw another 4 hours, half a day on top of it, then at least he's had more confidence to be able to do that himself.
Yeah. So one last question, and it might be a little bit curly, but I think it's an important thing to understand or to dive into, is that I speak to many builders, and there was one I just had a conversation with not that long ago, maybe a month ago, going through some numbers, and this person that I think should have known better, still, I asked the question, how much does it cost you to keep your doors open on a daily basis? So if you're working 250 days a year, what are all of your overhead expenses divided by 250, so you know how much it costs you, your overhead costs per day. Now, some of our members I know have worked it out to the point where they can cover all of their overhead costs with the labour costs that they're charging out for, but many builders don't, because they don't know that figure, and they're just paying their team based on what they have to pay them plus a little bit, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So they think that they're making money on them, but the overhead costs of running the business aren't accounted for at all in the price of the project. They may put a margin on things and think, I'm going to make X amount of profit. And this is what I discussed with this person the other day. And it was like the lights came on that they weren't charging for that, and they thought they were making X% of profit. But all that profit, all of it, was going to pay for the electric light bill and the car bill and the insurance bill and all of that sort of stuff. So they're not making any profit at all, which is more common than you would think. So is that somehow taken care of with what you do with V2E, or is that something that the builder needs to know with their own numbers and then add that on top of the estimate based on how many days or how many man hours, however they work it out, in the estimate? Do they need to give you that information? How does it work?
I think, to be honest, I think that comes into there's a couple of different things. It is a bit of a curly one, but I think it is a great question, and I think you're right, and I think you're right as well, Mick. In like, people be surprised about how many builders probably wouldn't think like that, and so when you do have somebody explain it like you've just explained it, it's like, oh, actually, yeah, all the lights come on. You go, yeah, okay. So what I think I'm making on this, I've actually got to spend that much just to keep the doors open to build this project.
Yep.
So I'm coming in and break even. Because one of the biggest traps builders fall into, and especially rural, like I'm country boy at heart, so like we're all in it to we're born and bred to want to help people and to want to do right by people and to get in and get things done. So one of the biggest traps builders fall into is they'll do all this work to quote a job, to sign up to do it. And then once they sign it, I just got to build it. I just got to get it done. I just got to finish it. It doesn't matter if I haven't allowed for this. I just got to get it. We need more timber, get it, because we just got to build it, because they get into building mindset kind of thing. But if they're not tracking their costs through the job and tracking things like, well, what is my overhead throughout this job? How much is my business costing me to run while this job's going? How are you ever going to account for that cost in your operations? So the other part that comes into this is like if builders have multiple jobs on the go at the same time. So your operating costs for your business, but is that spread across, do we have 2 jobs on the go at once, or do we have 1 job on the go? Because the other thing builders have the habit of doing is, we're falling behind on this, so I need more people to do this, I think. And so we hire more people to do it. So what they do is they add another wage bill to the business to get something done without then taking into account how much extra that adds into their overhead to account across their job costs as well, I think, because they just want to get it done, get it done, and all that kind of stuff. So my answer to that is how we can help is, what I like to think is, if we can help lay out the builder's template or estimate so that it's as detailed and has all that information in there, it means that across the job, as the job's running, we can help by knowing when invoices are back invoiced against your allowances, you actually are seeing where you're spending more time more hours, more costs that you maybe have not accounted for, kind of thing. But the other part to it is we have a saying here at V2E, or I have a saying at V2E, it's builders need to know what their building DNA is. And so what I think a builder's DNA is everything that makes you as a builder an individual builder. So if you look at two houses, right? And you could send those two houses to two different builders. Now, to a client's point of view, from the outside, it could look exactly the same. On the inside, they could use the same finishes, could feel exactly the same, all that kind of stuff. But the parts that make those two houses different is what the builder's DNA is that goes into that build. So that is the difference between, well, what part of our builder's DNA is we are healthy home practices. So we wrap things with WRBs. We use this cavity batten. We use this type of flashing down the bottom with a ventilated cavity. We don't use treated timber because we don't like this. We use wet area plasterboard, not villa board. We do all that kind of stuff. On our cladding corners, we use 66 by 42 LOSP when we butt weatherboards into it because it looks really nice. Does this, we don't have to do the soakers. Whereas the second builder's DNA might be we hand build all the frames. We don't get them pre-made. It doesn't matter what the engineer says. We will always do trusses at 600 centers minimum because it reduces the fall factor for the carpenters when they're on the roof. We want to use this metal top hat purlin and not a 9045 purlin on the roof because it's the way it's better for us to screw our sheets into, and it's all that kind of stuff. So knowing what your DNA is in a builder is never going to be detailed anywhere on any plan, any document, any engineering, all that kind of stuff, but it is integral to the builder. And that comes right down to how your business is run. What is the DNA of how you run your business? This is how I calculate overhead. So this is the percentage per job I put in on every job cost to make sure I'm covering that. Or this is what my allowance is per job to this. Or this is how I calculate it with administration costs per job, or this kind of job. Or we allow this many hours of project management at this rate, because if we allow it at this rate, it can cover X amount of overheads for us, things like that. So understanding what your builder's DNA is integral to the builder, because it's going to float through, and it should float through all the way from the first conversation you have with the client. This is how we build because this is my DNA as a builder, to how you estimate the job, because it should affect how much the job costs, which therefore it should be based on what's in the job, which is then going to float through to construction because that's how you're going to build it. And then when you hand over the house, what house the client's going to end up with has got that builder's DNA all the way through the build. So it's a little bit of a different way to answer it, but hopefully that kind of makes sense and what I'm a real big believer on as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So, I mean, it's obvious that you're passionate about it. It's obvious that you've got a deep knowledge of this, and it's very interesting listening to all of that and the detail, and yet another example of how much knowledge and skill and experience builders have to be successful. It's not as simple as some of the clients out there seem to think it is.
100%.
There's a fair bit to it, obviously. So thank you very much for sharing that knowledge. It's obviously immense, and putting the time aside to come onto the podcast. Really appreciate it. It's great that you're backing the building industry, like doing things to improve the industry as a whole, make it more professional, make them, lift the trust factor between the builder and the client. Super important. So appreciate what you're doing.
Nah, all good. Appreciate you having me on, and love to always chat about this stuff. So I think it's great. So thanks, Mick.
Thanks very much, Tom. So that's it for this episode of the Tool Shed. If this started to get the old brain box ticking over and going, there might be a few things that I might be missing, it might be worth jumping on the interwebs and going to v2e.com.au. So that's V for Victor, the number 2, E for Echo, .com.au. We'll put the link in the description anyway, so you don't even have to pay any attention to what I just said. You can just click on the link, which is just far easier. And away you go. Have a conversation to the lads over at V2E. And just a quick reminder, when we hang up here, if you haven't done the Builder Scorecard, just invest 90 seconds and it will be one of the best 90 seconds that you will invest. for your business, because the information that you will get based on how you're scoring those areas can help you make some super gains very, very quickly. So it's a great way to take a step forward with the effectiveness of your business, and it only takes 90 seconds and you're into it. So there you have it. We will be back with another episode of the ToolShed Podcast. Before you know it, my name is Mick Hawes. I'm from Builder's Business Black Belt. That is all. I'm out. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the ToolShed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.